What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a spring game takeaways edition of the Coach and the Couch Potato. As always, I'm Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. We are here courtesy of the Barn Baseball and Softball Academy. Big spring game yesterday. Let's just hop right into it. We got 3 or 4 takeaways we want to hop into. Go ahead and kind of give us a premise of what you saw.
Yeah, man. Obviously, spring game. It's crazy to think that the spring game is already here. It was weird to look out there and see the championship guys getting their rings. I thought that was pretty crazy. But yeah, looking at the spring game, man. The first big takeaway for me, obviously, and I know we're gonna really hammer this home, man. Julian Sayin, man, he looked really comfortable. I loved seeing him. In command of the offense. I pulled up his stats. His stats aren't going to wow you. He was 16 to 25, 178 yards and 1 touchdown. But obviously, what you want to see in a starting quarterback is that he's out there in full command of the offense. And I think that he had that. I think it timed up really well. Every 2-minute situation, he was the quarterback that was out there. And I think that tells you a lot about a quarterback's leadership qualities and his communication abilities. And I thought he did a really good job in those situations. In the first 2-minute situation, he had Quincy Porter fall down on one of his routes, and I think that would have extended that drive a little bit more. But his elite qualities jump off the screen to you. He's quick release, and just some of those things that made him the number 1 quarterback in the country. And so that was really, really good to see, man. I think he definitely pulled ahead in this quarterback competition. That's not a knock on Lincoln. Lincoln's got some good things that he was doing as well. Made some great throws. So did Tavian. But I think Julian Sayin, man, I think he opened some eyes, and I think he may have had a couple bad practices. But when he got out there in front of 50,000 people, he really showed who he was.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Not a knock on the other guys because honestly, Lincoln looked good at times too, but later in the game.
Yeah.
The first 3 Lincoln drives were very clunky.
Yeah.
Missing JJ, that's hard to do. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. Even on the drives where Julian may not have led to a score, he still, like you said, command is the key word. It just looked smoother. And that is what you want. You want that. You want it to be fluid, I guess you would say. You want there to be just cohesion. The run game looked better when he was in there, which the way they were doing the spring game, I'm not putting a ton of stock into what we saw out of the defense, especially against the run. But because you didn't know when they were going to blow it dead or if they were going to let you hit. So it's hard to go all the way. But Sayin, I think, is the clear-cut guy. I think Lincoln is definitely number 2. You saw Tavian make some freshman mistakes, but you also saw Tavian push through and rebound, much like we saw Rory McIlroy do today. So to see a freshman be able to do that is a great sign for what that kid's going to bring to the table too.
Oh, Tavian's special, man. He showed off his athletic ability. He made some freshman mistakes. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's what we expect to see. The kid's still supposed to be in high school right now. Those are some things that he definitely made. The interception to Fahim Delane was definitely a good play by Fahim, but he kind of baited him into that throw. I mean, there was no doubt about it. And so there were some definite freshman mistakes that were made, but something that I always tell my defensive backs is it's great that you can go make a play, but you're going to get beat one time. It's awesome. But how are you going to respond? What's that next play mentality that we have to embody? That's one of the things. The same thing for a quarterback. That's awesome. All right. Hey, you threw a touchdown or you threw a pick. What are you going to do on the next play? Right. And so I think Tavian really showed hey, I can erase what I just did, and then I can go put together a good drive. He's got all the qualities, man. And I think next year, he's going to battle. He's not going to just run away from competition. And I love seeing that. Same thing with Lincoln. Lincoln played well. He showed off that athletic ability. There was a couple zone reads that he kept, and I think he is just a +1, obviously, in that run game. And so you have to take that into consideration in this quarterback battle. You cannot rule that out. I mean, I think with Brian Hartline and the tempo that he was really showing that he wants to call this offense with, I think, I think Lincoln provides that type of, +1 in the run game threat that we really could use. And we saw what that did for us in the playoffs with Will Howard. And so, listen, I know Julian really did well. He really popped off at the screen to us, but you cannot rule out Lincoln in this. And I thought Tavian did some really good things and showed why, he's such an elite prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good spot to be in. I
No
think
doubt about it.
I think the silver lining to the whole thing is I don't think anybody is exponentially ahead of them of the race. I think
Yeah.
Julian's ahead, but I think that Ryan Day can honestly tell those guys, I don't know yet. So you don't really risk somebody leaving when the portal opens on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is a very close battle still between the top two guys. And you're not going to run that risk, but I do think Julian definitely did inch a little bit ahead in this battle for sure.
Yep, absolutely. The second thing I had written down, a guy we've talked about a lot. We said he came in late last year. He was behind the 8 ball, but once he gets acclimated, Mylan Graham.
Yeah.
Stud. There's no other way to put it. He
Yeah.
did a lot of stuff really good yesterday. Obviously the route running, which you've always said. Obviously there wasn't a ton of run game stuff because at Ohio State, if you're a wide receiver, you've got to block.
Yeah. No doubt about it. And I think Mylan Graham, obviously we've said it a million times. He's a forgotten guy. He was pretty much a consensus 5-star. He's, out of Indiana. This kid can ball. I mean, he's got all the intangibles. He can do so many things. He's got great ball skills, route running ability. He's got top end speed. I mean, he is, other than maybe height, he's got every intangible, every physical trait that you want in a receiver. And he really showed that yesterday. In the little RPO action, the slant that he took to the crib, that was one of the things that he can do. He's got that breakaway ability. And so that was one thing I wanted to see from a receiver not named Jeremiah, whether it was going to be Mylan, whether it was going to be Bryson, whether it was going to be Carnell. I kind of exclude Carnell out of that because I think we know what we're going to get from Carnell. It's pretty consistent what we're going to get from Carnell. But was it going to be Brandon Ennis? Was it going to be Mylan? Was it going to be Bryson? Was it going to be Quincy Porter? Like, who is going to be that guy that can step up and be the next big play threat for us? And I was happy to see somebody step up and do that. Now, we know that it's a spring game. We've all fell victim to the Bam Childress virus, right? We for years we would say Bam's going to be that guy, right? But I don't think Mylan's going to fall victim of that. But it does show you the ability that he has. And so I was glad to see that he was able to put that on full display. And he kind of put some guys on notice too. Like, I know you and I are big Brandon Ennis fans, and I think Brandon Ennis is going to have a spot in this rotation no matter what. I think he's going to be a top 3 guy. But I think, you can't rule out Mylan. You can't rule out having a role for this guy. You can't rule out Quincy either. And so I was glad to see Mylan really jump off the screen and really make some plays for us. And just as a reminder, like, hey, I know we got Jeremiah, Carnell, and BI, but don't forget about me, man. I was a 5-star as well.
Yeah, and another guy that I think we saw flashes yesterday, Phillip Bell.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Chris Olave in the way that dude runs.
Yeah. He's a lot bigger than I thought he was too.
Yeah.
He's a lot bigger than I was, in practice. I got to see him up close and he was a good size, but like seeing him in like, the actual uniform, like it just really stood out. I was like, okay, he's got some really good size to him. So this receiving core, man, like can we just take a second and just really, really, I know we all do, but like what Brian Hartline has put together, like let's just, it is not normal. Even if you look at the walk-on receivers that we have, the David Adolphs, the Reese Stockdales, all these guys, they just look different, right? And they just look the part. And so shout out to Coach, Jordan, Coach Hartline, all the receiver GAs, everybody that's put into Zone 6 and that room, man. It is the best room in the country, coached by the best receiver coach in the country. And so, they just keep pumping out talent, man. And it's just awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I hate to make this skewed toward the offense, um, but again, it's a spring game. The
Yeah.
defense wasn't showing a lot. You're not going to blitz Caleb Downs in the spring game. You're not going to run stunts and twists and that type of stuff. Um, Last thing, outside of the obvious, Max Clare, that's a given. That dude's a dog.
Yeah, man.
Um, so we're not even going to talk about him. Um, the running backs, a huge position of concern when you lose Trey and Quinshawn. We're fine, y'all.
Yeah, man.
CJ Donaldson looked explosive AF.
Yeah.
Peoples, they didn't run him a lot. Makes me wonder if maybe he's dealing with some nagging spring ball type injury.
Yeah.
But your boy Bo knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you said it before we got on here, man. It's interesting to see what a guy can look like when they're 100% healthy. And we know Bo Jackson dealt with some things his senior year that really stopped him from being that prominent national recruit. At his high school, he was counted on to play both sides of the ball. We've talked about that. He played through some injuries, and that just shows you what type of kid that he is, right? He would do anything for his brothers at the high school ranks. It didn't matter whether he was going to Ohio State or not. And that's special, right? And so now that he's 100% healthy, I think you're starting to see that. Side note, number 25 is the greatest number of all time. And so I love seeing another, number 25 out there. It's fantastic. But he's explosive, man. And he's big. He doesn't look like a freshman. He made some great cuts. There was a zone read that they ran, and we played some cover zero, and there was a nice cut to the backside where Lincoln could have kept it, and he decided to give it. And we had and Bo, jump cut to the backside, and I was like, man, that is a big time jump cut to that backside. You got to have some pretty good vision to see that. That's something I would expect Quinshawn or Trey to make, but to see that as a freshman, that was good. He's really good, man. And CJ Donaldson, again, Jake Butt said it, really, he brought this up. Like, CJ Donaldson is a very experienced back, 30 plus touchdowns in his career. Like, I just think people kind of wrote him off as like this, just he's coming from West Virginia. He's not really, going to be that top guy, but like, he is really good. And I think we've said it on here multiple times. He could have that Trey Sermon type of impact. And so
Mhm.
I really think, and I think Sam Williams-Dixon looks good, and we know what we're
Yes.
going to get from James Peoples when he's healthy. I think we're going to have 4 backs that get carries, and I think they're all going to be deserving of it. And so this running back room is stacked, and if our interior offensive line plays the way that they did yesterday, and we saw a lot of gap scheme stuff, I think they just know that we're going to really lean on this running game, especially with a first-year starter at quarterback. I think we have 4 guys in the backfield that we can really really lean on. And so I think that's going to be fun to watch as the year progresses. And if we want to make another run at it, we're going to need them. And so it's going to be good. And I was glad to see, those guys really show and showcase what they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to skew everything to the offense. I know you noticed a couple of things on the defensive side of the ball. So I know we said 3 or 4 takeaways, but let's go ahead and throw out some defensive takeaways too.
Yeah, man. We always got to talk about some defense when we're on here. The first thing for me, and like you said, it's the spring game. Having coached in college, I understand the spring game. You're not going to be showing a lot. You're going to be lining up in your base stuff. You want to see the guys execute. You want to see them communicate. You want to see them fly around. And when you go live, you want to see them execute good, sound, solid tackling, right? First thing I'll say about the tackling aspect, Jalen McClain is a sure tackler. I love seeing him
Yeah.
come up. He had a great form tackle on Jelani Thurman, so that was something that got me pumped up. Side note, don't mean to go off on a tangent there, but it gets me pumped up. But one of the things that I did like about the defense, and I did like seeing, was I thought our defensive ends did a really good job of generating pressure.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about Kenyatta, and I'm not worried about Caden Curry. What are we going to see from CJ Hicks? What are we going to see from Logan George, right? The new transfer that we got in. And I thought Logan George did a really good job of asserting himself and showing that he can provide something for this team. And that's always something you're going to be worrying about from a guy who's coming from the FCS ranks. Obviously the speed of the game is going to be different. We talked about it in the last episode. I had the opportunity to have a conversation with him in person, and that was one of the things that he said to himself, like, yeah, man, the speed of the game is different. I'm adjusting. And it was awesome to see him go out there and play well. You heard Coach Day talk about it in his presser. He's got violent hands, right? He plays physical as crap with his hands, and that's what you want to hear from a defensive end, and so a defensive lineman in general. And so that is one thing I'm super excited about, just to see that guy be able to provide good, sound, solid depth for us really pumps me up. And so that was one of the positives about the defense I was really happy to take. You talked about it earlier. Obviously the defensive backs, we're not worried about them too much. I guess my concern, and it's hard to say because we were so vanilla on defense, but I will say our interior offensive line is very good, especially in that first group. But there was some knockback, like Coach Day said, and they were able to push us around a little bit on the interior, even with our first group, even with Caden McDonald out there, even with Edric Houston. And I think those are two of the better defensive tackles in the country. And so I would like to see us, I would like to see what direction we're going to go now. Are we going to go into the portal? Right. I'm not saying I'm like overly concerned, because as the game went on, I thought Jason Moore, I thought Eric Mensah, I thought Jarquez Carter, I thought all of those interior guys flashed and did some really good things. I thought Jason Moore did some really good things in the pass rush, right? He knocked down one of Julian Sayin's passes, right? I thought there were some really good things that they did, but it's still inexperienced depth. And so what direction are we going to go? I find it hard to believe that we are going to leave the spring thinking like we are 100% certain this is the group that we're going to go into the fall with. And we've said it before, that's not a knock on the guys that we have. I think we have a lot of talent there, but they're just not proven. What's going to happen when we go up against proven offensive lines? We saw what could potentially happen if we go up against proven interior offensive lines, because we have that now on our offensive line. And so I guess that is my kind of concern that I have, but I do think we have talent there. It's just who's going to be that guy that steps up and can be an anchor in there for us. And we need a pair and a spare. We can't just have Edric and we can't just have, Caden. We need at least 4, possibly 5 guys in there that can rotate in and out. And so I guess that was a concern, but as you know, we'll be blitzing, we'll be stunting, we'll be doing a lot of different things on the interior. And so we were super vanilla. And this is just me overthinking, and this is just me being hypercritical because I'm a defensive coach. And so I just want to see what direction we go. And hey, if Coach Johnson says and Coach Day say, hey, these are my guys and we're rolling with them, all right, then let's go. Coach them up. They'll be ready to go when the fall comes. But I just want to see what direction we go in. So that was my concern, man.
Yeah, I get it. I think I'm a little bit more concerned than I thought I would be about the linebackers.
Okay.
We know what we've got with Sonny, and, we're going to continue to see him improve. Arvell Reese was schooled on the one Max Clare touchdown.
Yeah.
And we saw him, last year, there were times where his youth showed, and he's a younger guy. So again, I'm not overly worried about it, because then on the backside of that, you saw Riley Pettijohn look really good.
Yep.
You saw Peyton Pierce look as good as advertised. So I'm just, again, it's unprovenness, it's a flip from last year, where this year the offense is going to essentially be outside of the quarterback position proven.
Yeah.
The defensive side of the ball, yes, you've got Caleb Downs. Yes, you have Edric. You've got Caden, or Caden Curry. You've got Kenyatta. And then you get some question marks. So it's going to be interesting to see. I also liked to, just that little bit of dog. We've talked about Aaron Scott being a dog.
Yeah.
You had him and Quincy Porter kind of yapping at each other, pushing and shoving. I'm going to take the dude from Springfield. Sorry, Quincy.
Yeah. And there are a couple of things about the linebackers, and I get it, the unprovenness, and I think Arvell Reese again is going to be used in a lot of different ways in Coach
For sure.
Patricia's defense. I don't think he's just going to be a straight up linebacker the entire time. I think he's going to be used in a multitude of ways. And that play you were talking about, it looked like, I believe that they were playing some version of cover two. He's got to turn and run. He's a hole dropper. He's got to really sprint and turn to get to that seam. He did not. And so that was something that I know that they're going to get coached up on. Because in cover two, that's where you are weak up the middle. And so that middle linebacker's got to really work to get there. And so that is something that, that's it's just coaching. And then that's just something that, is a mental mistake that will get corrected. But it'll be interesting to see how we use Arvell going forward. The one thing I was happy to see, though, I thought CJ Hicks did a really good job. I think people underestimate how his athleticism translates to that defensive end position. I don't think I mean, maybe it was me too. I questioned a little bit whether he could be a 4-down guy. I think he can be a 4-down guy. He held up very well. There was one play where he had to take on Luke when Luke pulled around on something. He did a really good job, holding his own against Luke. And Luke's a big boy, and we know that. And Luke's big and strong and physical. And CJ did a good job, man. And so I think CJ is going to be ready to go, continue to refine those pass rush skills, and I think he's going to provide a lot of good things for us on the defensive end side of things. Peyton Pierce, man. Peyton Pierce is the real deal. There was one play, I don't know who the defensive or the offensive guard was, but he just completely obliterated him, put him straight on his butt, man. And it was like, it's just fun to see, linebackers just playing relentless sideline to sideline football. And Peyton Pierce and Riley Pettijohn, you got two of them. That is just who they are. That is innately who they are, man. And so I think those guys are really good. And I said his name earlier, but Jalen McClain, I mean, he is a Caleb Downs clone, man. Like even the way that he's like the way that he stands and his stance and all these different things, man. I see a lot of the things that they like about Jalen McClain. So shout out to him, man. I thought he had a good spring game. And then one thing I want to say, last episode, I called Malik Hartford Malik Harrison, and that's 2 episodes in a row that I've done that. So Malik, I am sorry. I keep doing that. Malik Hartford, I'm excited for what he's going to bring. I think he's going to play down in the box a lot more than we think because he's a big physical player. So Malik Hartford, I apologize for doing that to you. That's my bad. I'm expecting big things from you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, that kind of ties together the spring game stuff. We could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sitting there yesterday kind of jotting some stuff down, and we would be remiss, as we are a college football inclusive podcast, before we get out of here, because we are trying to shorten these episodes down a little bit for you guys. Especially during the off season, because when it comes game time, no promises.
Yeah.
But we would be remiss if we didn't address the transfer portal elephant in the room. The transfer portal opens Wednesday. The Tennessee situation. We are very much pro player, and if you are aware of what's going on, Tennessee's star quarterback Nico, is going to the portal. There had become some scuttlebutt that there were some issues going on, and then he misses practice on Friday with their spring game on Saturday. So kudos to Josh Heupel for getting out in front of this, and not putting up with it. As much as we are players first guys, I am a bigger advocate of these guys need to surround themselves with people who will have their best interests in heart. There are there's a million different stories out there about this whole thing. And it sounds like the common ground is Nico's people were shopping even maybe prior to the Ohio State playoff game. And of all people, Dan Lanning was the whistleblower.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
That Nico's team is out here shopping for a better deal. We're going to leave if not. That's not the way you do this.
No.
And that's not what NIL was intended for. So I get Nico feeling his worth, but shame on his handlers and his people for now making this kid look absolutely stupid.
Yeah, man. I've gone back and forth on how I feel about this. And like you said, like we are all about the players getting paid. Like I will advocate for that all day long. Like I don't
Yep.
listen. If somebody's willing to pay you, you should be able to take all that money. I don't care.
Yep.
If somebody's willing to pay you $3 billion to come to their school and play quarterback, then hey, if you want to go there for that, go. Like
Yep.
I'm all for that. But when it comes to like having these contract
Yeah.
negotiations and holding out and stuff, like okay, like that is kind of where I see like where some of the people were upset with NIL because they
Yeah.
feared that this could happen. Like this is where I can see like okay, now I get what you were saying. um you know, I could almost understand if you were the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and you're coming off a national championship. Oh, okay. If you were Will Howard and you had another year,
Correct.
I could understand if you were like, hey, like I'm coming back to school. I want another $1 million or I'm
Right.
going to hit the portal. Like I could understand it then. I may not like it. And I would understand if Coach Day said, you know what? Hey, I appreciate what you did. We're going to move
Kick
on.
rocks. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And shout out to Coach Heupel for standing his ground. Like oh gosh, like I'm so back and forth on how I feel about this, but you're playing with fire, man. Like you may want $4 million, but dude, your stats are okay. They weren't the greatest. You put up good numbers against inferior opponents. Yeah, you had some good plays against the Buckeyes, but you know, you didn't really do too much in a lot of the big games. And who out there is going to pay you that much? And are you going to be in a position to go to the playoffs again at that school that's going to pay you that much? And then what message are you sending these NFL teams as well that were considering you to be one of the top quarterback prospects in a couple years, you know, because you have all the intangibles as far as physical traits, you have the athletic ability, you have the arm, you have all those things, right? Everybody sees that. So now what message are you sending? And so um I don't think he'll be the last person we see this from. I think we'll see some other skill position players do this. I think there will be an offensive tackle in the future that may do this as well. It sucks, but you know, this is until the NCAA and the College Football Playoff Committee or whatever decide to put some guardrails on this thing. This is what we're going to get. And so it's a crazy time, man. It's a crazy time. I never thought we'd have like a contract dispute
Right.
for a 19 or 20-year-old kid in Rocky Top. But you know, here we are. And shout out to Coach Heupel for standing his ground. And you know, I mean, he can go into the portal and probably go find somebody that's
Ex-
experienced and be just fine. So
exactly.
it will be interesting, man.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty wild. But I think with that, we've kind of hit the big stuff in college football this week. Definitely want to come at you guys with a bag of recruiting chips later this week. After, you know, some notes come out from the visitors this weekend. Elite 11 was in Ohio today. Lots of stuff to cover on that front. But yeah, I think with that, we're going to go ahead and hop off of here. And we will see you guys later in the week.